Here's Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, and of course the host of RinkWide Vancouver. They're busy at it Saturday, although at a reasonably early hour after the Eastern start.
Home for dinner.
Ottawa. Absolutely. Hi, Jeff.
Yeah, and they're getting earlier on this trip with a noon start and a 9:30 start coming up on the weekend. So, yeah, favorable. You're right. Home in plenty of time, see the family, and get a good night's rest. And I'm sure those 5 defenders that were forced to carry the load in the absence of Quinn Hughes probably needed a good night's rest as well. Credit to them. And I know we're going to talk a fair bit about what went on in the nation's capital on Saturday. Can we just start, though, with the keep away in the third period? The delayed penalty. Incredible. Like, really, look, we've all been around the game for a long time. I've seen teams do that to some degree, but almost
to some degree.
Full minutes. Spectacular stuff. And then, as somebody pointed out in my timeline, and I thought it was a great point, like, what happened to the Sens at the end? They ran out of time. Could they not have benefited from a few more minutes with the puck when they're trying to press for the equalizer? But they should have tried a little harder to get the puck there when the referee's arm was in the air. That was just a wild sequence.
And we see it in every other sport, guys. We see it in every other sport.
Run out the clock.
When you're in football, you use up every second of the play clock if you're leading with the ball. You know,
Absolutely.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah, and last time we saw keep away with that, like Henrik and Daniel were here in Vancouver, right? They were effective at keep away. Apologies to our audio listeners, our podcast listeners for a second, but Jeff, that's some hoodie. Is that a Rick Tocchet fleece
no, it's
redux
Canucks Army
early...
issued. You can see the fine logo right there.
Yeah.
It's comfortable, but I will say there's just a little too much hood in the hoodie here. Yeah.
Can we get hood up for a second and see just how much?
There's a lot there. Like,
oh boy,
excess.
Yeah, that
Obi-Wan.
thing will
Obi-Wan.
envelop.
Yes,
Jeff.
Yeah. Very solid coverage.
Yes.
You could wear it with your hockey helmet on.
That's true.
If you choose, it'd be good for Tocchet. You should get Tocchet one. That would work well.
If you have any outdoor games to cover, Jeff, that's the hoodie you want, my dude.
We have Canuck practice to cover. We'll get to that in a second. Let's finish up in Ottawa. The fact that they were able to overcome, and we felt like the reserves were, or the cavalry was coming, and it looks like that might be the case for Brock Besser sometime in the next couple games, if not tomorrow. But that was just a nice, gut win. Like they found a way.
Yeah, and I was getting tired of saying, hey, Jake DeBrusk has to rise up here at some point. So great to see him get a pair of that line right now. Like, they are grooving. And does it make a ton of sense? I mean, on some levels, I suppose, but Kiefer Sherwood was not brought in to be one of the goal-scoring leaders on the Vancouver Canucks, and yet here he is through 19 games. This guy really has done it all, and it's not coming at the expense of what's made him successful. He had 10 more hits the other night in Ottawa, his fourth 10-plus hit game of the season. Like, it really is remarkable. And so they needed somebody to step up. Another sort of quiet but effective performance from Elias Paterson. 2 more assists there. So of those 3, though, DeBrusk needed that kind of night against his old buddy Linus Ullmark too. So that probably made it just a little bit sweeter. And then credit to the 5D that did have to hold down the fort. And I thought it was fascinating, guys. And we may never fully know, but the opening lineup, it's Brandstrom and Myers who start the game together for all the howls in this market about switching and getting away from Soucy and Myers. I think they played 3 shifts together before Quinn got turfed, and then basically it's all hands on deck. And Filip Hronek becomes your ice time leader, and he was terrific the other night in all situations. I thought Hronek's best work, though, was on the Quinn Hughes penalty kill there. Logged 3 minutes and 5 seconds of the 5-minute major. And that was a big kill for the Canucks. Opportunity missed, obviously, for the Sens. There were a few of those as the night went along before they started to implode. But that's a tough circumstance, obviously, when your captain, your leader, your ice time guy that you're just leaning on every night, he gets thrown out of a hockey game that early. And so, the kind of start the Canucks needed out on the road trip, set the tone here, put those 2 points in the bank, move on to Boston now. And we've said that there are some gettable games here along the way. So just a nice jumping on point, and the fact that they may get some reinforcements as they move through this road trip as well. So, a lot to like in the 4-3 victory. Would have liked to have seen it through to 4-1 or even 4-2, but whatever. A win's a win, and move on to Boston.
I've been thinking about DeBrusk, and if in fact this is him, Jeff, and all the intel from Boston was that he's a streaky scorer, boy, you're really going to need him to be on a hot streak in the playoffs, huh? And if you go through an extended playoffs, and I know I'm getting way ahead of myself, but, if we are looking forward to what this team needs to do to get past the Oilers and past the second round, if you're in extended playoffs, it's going to need to be a long hot streak as well. Talk to me about the streakiness. Talk to me whether or not you think he can be everything he needs to be for Paterson and this hockey club if they're going to go deeper in the postseason.
Yeah, look, I get it. I've heard that a lot too, that this is Jake DeBrusk. Well, okay, if you're streaky, I suppose that means it does cut both ways and that you'll have some dry spells, but then when the going's good, that's when you feast. Now, he scored in 3 straight on the California road trip, then went the entire 6-game homestand where, quite frankly, I thought he was just a little too quiet, even as they put that line together with Paterson and Sherwood scoring the goals, and maybe that's because Petey was putting the puck on his stick as opposed to DeBrusk's. Whatever the case, power play goal, his first as a Canuck, standing his ground in front of the net. You want to see some of that. And I don't know how many opportunities he's going to get. If Besser comes back, somebody's going to get bumped off that top unit. We've already seen that he's been demoted from the first unit power play earlier in the season. So I'm not totally sure where things stand with Jake DeBrusk on power play 1. But to his credit, was given the opportunity, made the most of it. And then the second goal shows nice hands in tight. And we also saw a nice goal in Los Angeles where he was at the side of the net, showed some patience, waited the goaltender out, and then tucked it in. All the credit in the world, though, to Kiefer Sherwood. Picks up that puck in the neutral zone, draws the defenders to him, and then feathers the pass to DeBrusk, who is on the business end there. So going back to Boston, I'm sure we know that he's an excitable guy. You have to know that this was probably the game of the 82 when the schedule came out that he looked at first and foremost. And so maybe he's getting revved up for the return to Boston. Who knows? I will say this, that a week ago, the Bruins were reeling, and obviously it's not been a great start for them. But since the coaching change, they've given up 1 goal in 2 games. So I don't know if anybody's going to be feeling it against the Boston Bruins. Look like they're clamping down and trying to tighten up defensively, so that'll make the challenge there a little bit greater. But yeah, I mean, look, there were a lot of suggestions that 20 to 25 goals for DeBrusk, but really the payoff would come, as you said, Matt, come playoff time. There's no way to know that truly until you get there, but that is where he has played some of his best hockey in the National Hockey League.
Well, and I was going to say, in fairness, the last 3 playoffs have been very good for Jake DeBrusk. 21 points in 27 games combined. It's the previous 2 where it's 7 points in 23 games. So right there, even in his playoff numbers, you see the streakiness. We're asking on our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question, is Kiefer Sherwood the long-lost winger for Elias Paterson? And there's part of me that can't believe that, Jeff, as a guy who was a late-blooming bottom 6 guy in Nashville. But you tell me, is he long for this line? Can't take him off right now. Do you think this season is going to do you think Kiefer Sherwood is going to be on that line long-term?
Does he just work with him?
Yeah, I still don't know that he's the long-term answer here as you're trying to build a team that wants to contend. That said, I mean, he has checked every box for the Vancouver Canucks and checked everything else for that matter that's been in his way this season. The 19 games, honestly, guys, if I'm sitting here, and I am, talking to you and trying to come up with a first quarter MVP for the Vancouver Canucks, I think it's Quinn Hughes by default. But how quickly do you move to Kiefer Sherwood in the discussion? Miller's not available. Besser's been out. Petey struggled. Garland got off to this terrific start and has leveled off. The level's still relatively high. But honestly, I think Kiefer Sherwood's name, and Kevin Lankinen's probably in that discussion as well, but I don't know that you go much deeper than 3 or 4. And who would have thought that on July 1st? This is a guy that, they liked him because he was hard to play against in the playoffs. He's going to bring some edge and a little bit of grit. This guy's part of it. He's got to share the team lead in goals. He leads the team in 5-on-5 offense here as we go, leading a runaway leader. He just keeps extending his lead atop the league in hits. And hasn't taken a night off, hasn't taken a shift off. So he's earned the opportunity here, but I still think, if Besser's back and Miller's back, is Pia Suter in your top 6? Where does Jake DeBrusk ultimately fit best? Does Connor Garland deserve more of an opportunity to play higher in the lineup? And I'll just say this, that through all of this, as Sherwood sort of emerged as this physical force, I kept thinking to myself, I can't wait till Dakota Joshua gets back, Sherwood on one side, Joshua on the other. I don't really care who's in the middle, but I think that would be a ton of fun to watch and probably not too much fun to play against, to have those two guys getting in on the forecheck. I still think at some point, if the Canucks have full health and have these options available to the coaching staff, that's something. I just kind of feels like a Rick Tocchet sort of deployment, doesn't it? Sherwood and Joshua together, kind of heat-seeking missiles getting in on the forecheck.
Do you think, well, because you referenced it there a moment ago, where do you think Boeser fits when he comes back here? Like, you're not bumping Sherwood for Boeser here.
Well, we've seen it in practice already today, and people are wondering, is Kiefer Sherwood a first-line winger right now? Well, I've got more shocking news based on practice today. Is Teddy Bluger a second-line center right now? Because that's who Boeser is with at practice. It's Teddy Bluger and Danton Heinen. Not willing is Rick Tocchet, I guess, to break up the suitor with Garland and Dakota Joshua.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the challenge for a coach is you've got a couple of pieces that are working for you, so you cling to those, and then you slot others in. And like Brock's a veteran now. Earlier in his career, I might say, hey, it'll take him a little while to get back up to speed. I think he recognizes the situation this team's in and what he means to the hockey club. So if he gets clearance, he's going to be in there, and he'll be looking to do Brock Boeser things. And part of me thinks Boeser was eyeing that game in Pittsburgh with all the success that he's had over the years against various Penguins goaltending. He's like, I got to get back in for that one. Feast on the Penguins when the getting's good. But there is the matter of Boston first, and he's got to get through that game healthy and unscathed. So, yeah, I mean, lots of moving parts here. Obviously, you take JT Miller out of your equation, and that changes the conversation on so many levels about how you try and trot things out. We saw against the Rangers, like Rick Tocchet tried to build two legitimate NHL top six lines and then kind of worry about the rest there. Had the effort, didn't get the result against the New York Rangers, but did get the result the other night against the Ottawa Senators. So, if Boeser has to take a bit of a step back, perhaps, if that's how we're looking at this for a game, just to kind of find his way back in the lineup, so be it. He'll be on the first unit power play. We'll know that, and hopefully that this hasn't affected his hands, because I think we kind of forget, like, Brock was off to a terrific start. He had 6 goals in a dozen games, and you just hope that this doesn't throw him for any kind of loop.
We talked about it Friday. He was right on pace for 40 goals and 70 points and following up that fantastic career year, so good on him. I know you mentioned the Branstrom Myers business there before Hughes was lost to the match penalty. Roenick, though, without Hughes over the course of the game, I think was a pretty good story. Does that maybe give you more evidence that, okay, if you needed to, Philip Roenick could anchor his own pair if you want to continue mixing things up?
Yeah, look, we've talked about that for so long in this market. It was the Senators, so context matters. There are better opponents, but on a night like the other night, pressed into duty, circumstances called that Philip Roenick stepped up. A season high for him in ice time, 27 and a half minutes. I think it was the third highest that he's ever played as a member of the Vancouver Canucks. So, pushing the limits a little bit, but he was terrific. He was on for all 4 of the Canuck goals, 3 of them at even strength, doesn't get scored on at evens. Well, the Sens didn't score at evens. So, again, at 5-on-5, that's what you want. Like, that's the Philip Roenick. So, yes, I think, sort of a small why, yes, that it has to give the coaching staff something. And in the same breath, and we talked about it a moment ago, like, it looked like they were going to split Soucy and Myers to begin with. Then they had no choice. Myers and Soucy played one shift, 21 seconds together at 5-on-5 the other night, and the results sort of speak for themselves that Myers and Branstrom were good. I thought Soucy and Juleson, they were the most common pair for Soucy. Not perfect. I don't think anybody would expect that it was going to be perfect, but there were some signs there that, yes, maybe this is something. And, of course, you can always juice your lineup. Like, if you split Hughes and Hronek in game, you can always put them together if you're down a goal and need some offense or the situation calls. But in the short term here, just to sort of solidify and stabilize, I do think that maybe it is time to take a look at Philip Hronek. And then it begs the question, like, who's best to play with Quinn Hughes, right? Are we talking about Tyler Myers and Hughes? Is there a huge appetite in the market to see that over the long haul? But these are the options that they've got. And so they have to figure it out. Hopefully Derek Forbort comes back. We talked the other day that he, not the savior, but just another piece in the equation here as they try to find sort of that optimal 6 and the best deployment to move forward with.
Is Quinn Hughes a a liability penalty-wise now? He went from Lady Byng contender in the first 10 games. Is he just too undisciplined out there?
We're being told we jinxed his Lady Byng candidacy, talking about how he needs more credit for that award earlier.
I just think he thought, look, I lead this team in so many other ways. I'm going to lead in penalty minutes too. I'll show you. It's funny because it had to be penalized. Like, it was a penalty. I think by the letter of the law, it's a penalty any way you look at it. And, of course, Canuck fans screaming bloody murder. And how could you do that to poor little Quinn? He doesn't play like that. And it was his buddy Josh Norris, too. But it's a penalty. And then the rule book says if there's injury to the face or head, then it escalates to major in a game misconduct. It's unfortunate. I didn't have a huge problem with it being a 5-minute penalty. It's a dangerous play. It's face first onto the dasher. It's not malicious because Quinn doesn't play that way, but I do think if the tables were turned, can you imagine the howls of outrage from Canuck Nation if Quinn Hughes is on the receiving end of that kind of treatment? So I do think you have to step back and sort of try and see it through a neutral's lens that it was a penalty all day, every day. Again, no supplemental discipline. It certainly didn't rise to that level, and that's enough of a punishment to lose Quinn Hughes 5 minutes into a hockey game and have to play the rest of the way without your best player and your captain. So he'll pick up. I wrote about this at Canucks Army. I mean, if there is a silver lining in this, to some degree, guys, they're playing 4 games in 5.5 nights here, starting in Boston, Pittsburgh, the early start in Buffalo, and the early start on Sunday. By the time they finish in Detroit, it really is 4 games in 5.5. Like, Canucks played against the Rangers Tuesday, Ottawa Saturday. Quinn plays 5 shifts. Like, they win the hockey game. Quinn gets to rest up for the remainder of this road trip. Like, if I'm scratching maybe a little bit for a silver lining, but to some degree, you don't get many true nights off when you're completely healthy in the National Hockey League. So Quinn got to put his feet up. Team went about its business, and he'll be motivated to get back in there and do all the great things that he does for the Vancouver Canucks.
Well, I mean, a couple of things. As Blake noted in the opening block, there's discretion on the high sticking penalty now. It used to be drawing blood and whatnot. You sort of wonder whether there can be discretion on this play as well, like what distinguishes
a wider spectrum.
Yeah.
To choose from.
What distinguishes them. And then the other thing we were talking about, Jeff, is there's a lot of Canucks fans spread across this country. Imagine you're spending big coin to attend that game in Ottawa as a Canucks fan, and you don't get to see Quinn Hughes
for sure
play in it. That's really too bad.
And just quickly, I'm with you in terms of the latitude of the officials. This one seemed black and white, but 5 minutes, but keep the captain
keep him in the game. No, exactly. Like a 5-minute penalty would that not have been enough?
It would seem reasonable.
Lastly, got to ask you about the kid in his first NHL game. What'd you make of Max Sasson?
Love the play to set up Teddy Bluger. A little spin move there, showed some patience, protects the puck, and then does what Bluger said he was calling for it. I assume that he knew that was a new teammate. Just screaming. Can't remember what his name is.
Yes.
another guy from Abbotsford. You pass me the puck. He did, and put it in a position, and loved the family reaction. Loved the story on Friday when Max talked about the phone call to his dad, and it really is not just the player. It takes a village, and so for him to share sort of the dad's reaction and crying when he got the phone call, like I've got all day for those stories. They never get old. Didn't play a ton. That fourth line didn't play an awful lot, but in the moments that he did play, certainly didn't look like the moment was too big for him. And I did love the Tyler Myers read and reaction to jump that play, intercept the puck, and move it up to Sasson on the right side, and then Sasson puts it in the wheelhouse for Teddy Bluger. So there was a lot to like on that line. We'll see if Besser comes back. Somebody comes out of the lineup. Is it as simple as Max Sasson, or is it getting close to Höglander time to come out of the lineup? 8.5 minutes, a new season low, nothing doing, 2 penalties or 3 penalties. I didn't have a problem with the penalty sticking up for himself on the Stützle thing, because at that point it looked like the Senators had completely abandoned the hockey game, and the puck was secondary and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't like this, especially after Hughes gets turfed, to see Stützle take a run at Höglander. But Höglander's there to do a whole lot more, obviously, than he has done. 15 games now without a goal, and we've just seen this too often throughout his career. When we talked about DeBrusk being streaky, I guess the same sort of applies here to Nils Höglander, but 8.5 minutes of ice time.
And where does it
go from here?
Yeah, well, because the other consideration here, Jeff, is do you have to maintain trade value here if you think he's the asset that gets you that top four?
Because remember, guys, he has a new contract that hasn't started yet. Like they need to protect the assets.
But they also
tricky.
like no Miller, no Besser the other night. Kiefer Sherwood's on power play 1. They basically rolled out that first line. And Archdeep Baines was on the second power play unit. Like, these are all signs. People are like, oh, stop it with the Höglander talk. No, the surest indication of what a coach thinks of a player is the way that he uses them. And Rick Tocchet's not using Nils Höglander much.
Yeah, and to healthy scratch him with Miller out of the lineup would be somewhat of an indictment with, to play Sasson or Baines. Anyways, we'll see where that goes tomorrow. Great stuff, Jeff. We won't be talking to you on Friday because of the early start in Buffalo, and you'll be preparing for RinkWide. We've got a bit of a different show that day. Anyway, so you have a wonderful week. Okay, enjoy U.S. Thanksgiving, and we'll catch up next Monday.
I'm going back into hiding now.
Into the hoodie. Yes, retreat. He looks like a druid.